They uncovered the mysterious identities of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Few knew what truly happened that night in a dusty little town cloaked in whispers and fear. Beneath a blood-red moon, secrets stirred in the shadows, and the air crackled with an energy that felt otherworldly in this ancient land. Where prophets once walked and storms bore messages, the very fabric of reality seemed to tremble. The first horseman rode out, a figure dressed in white, his horse gleaming like fragile porcelain. They called him Conquest. Yet why did he carry no weapons? No, his power lay not in swords, but in the allure of ambition that turned hearts against each other. People rushed to follow, but was it loyalty or a desperate chase for empty victories? Then came war, roaring like a thunderstorm, his steed black as pitch. Clad in armor that glinted with the blood of countless battles, he instilled terror with every crushing hoofbeat. The townsfolk shivered. He wasn't just a warrior, was a dark omen, tearing families apart, igniting men to rise against their own. How could a life of strife promise any glory? Why were they so eager for bloodshed? Famine followed, thin and pale, like a wraith emerging from the edge of nightmares. His mount moved with a ghostly grace, yet the stench of decay followed in every step. Crops wilted in his presence. Children begged for food that wasn't there. Desperation clawed at their bellies. Was this not the ultimate punishment for greed? To witness prosperity vanish in an instant, leaving only echoes of hunger? And lastly, there was death cloaked in gray shadows, his horse a dark silhouette against the world. Panic rippled through the crowd. No one could escape his gaze. His presence promised the finality no one dared to consider. But was he truly here to fulfill fate, or to offer a twisted chance of rebirth? Was there space for hope in the despair he carried? Together, these four figures galloped through the night, intricately woven into the fabric of destiny, yet never fully revealed. Each identity carried a weight of contradictions. They caused heartaches and fledgling rebellions. What sinister purpose united them? What hidden truths lay beneath their ominous arrival? As the townsfolk gathered, whispers spread like wildfire, igniting fear and intrigue. Could these horsemen be more than they seemed? Were they harbingers of doom or twisted guides to awakening? In the depths of that dark night, as hearts raced and souls trembled, that haunting question lingered in the air. Were they creators of chaos or stewards of change? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the whispers continued to ripple through the night air, they took on a life of their own. The people huddled in groups, exchanging glances tinged with both fascination and dread. It was not long before a voice rose above the murmurings. A wise elder, known for his deep insights and stories of old, stepped forward. The crowd fell silent, hearts pounding in anticipation. Listen, my brothers and sisters, the elder called, his voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. These riders do not come without purpose. In times of uncertainty, it is said that the divine sends forth signs. What we see before us may indeed be a reflection of our own hearts, the darkness we harbor, the ambitions we nurture. His words ignited a flicker of understanding in some. Yet questions loomed larger than answers. A young woman, her eyes bright and searching, raised her hand, boldly interrupting the elder. But if they are reflections, do we not have the power to change what we see? Can we not turn this tide of despair into hope? The elder studied her, a hint of admiration in his gaze. Indeed, young one, but such transformation demands a reckoning. We must confront the shadows that reside within us. At that moment, a fierce wind swept through the town, causing lanterns to sway dramatically. The blood-red moon hung low, as if listening, and the riders drew closer to the edge of the town. Conquest, War, famine, and death each paused, observing the humans who dared to acknowledge their presence. Something shifted in the atmosphere, a connection felt between the four figures and the gathered crowd. The people shuddered as a voice deep, resonant, yet eerily beautiful emerged from the shadows. You speak of change, yet where will it begin? You call upon the light, but the darkness is ever present. What are your desires? What is the path you choose when faced with such forces? In response, murmurs of determination coursed through the crowd. We will not be cowed. One man shouted, his fists clenched. We will rise against the fear that binds us. His declaration was met with hesitant cheers from others, yet many remained uncertain, hearts still shrouded in doubt. The elder raised a hand. It begins with truth, acknowledging both our courage and our frailty. What must we confront within ourselves to thwart the path these riders lead us down? For the war is not only battled in the fields, but also in our spirits. At that moment, war's hollow laughter echoed ominously, while famine blew a chilling breeze over the crowd, causing shivers to run down spines. How easily fear weaves its web, tightening its grip with every exhalation. From among the townsfolk, an elder woman, cloaked in patches, spoke with a voice heavy with experience. We have known famine, we have known war. Are we ready to embrace the challenge of creating our own destiny? To turn against the tide of conquered hearts and withered dreams? Doubt flickered in the crowd, but curiosity began to rise like dawn's first light. Could they truly reshape their fate, pull the threads of destiny from the horseman's grip? As the moonlight cast an ethereal glow on the riders, the air crackled again with energy, leaving an unsettling silence where answers could linger. What truths would unfurl if they dared to face the shadows within? And so the question remained. Would they rise to acknowledge their power, or submit to the fear that encroached like a thick fog? In the unsettling stillness that followed, the townsfolk felt as though time itself had paused, caught in a moment where reality mingled with the whispers of the unknown. The blood-red moon illuminated the scene, casting long shadows that danced like specters around the gathered souls. It was a sacred juncture, a moment poised delicately between despair and hope. The wise elder, recognizing the gravity of the choice before them, stepped forward once more. You see before you not only forces of destruction but also reflections of your own spirit, he said, his voice rich with the weight of many seasons. In each of these riders lies a truth about us. Conquest shows our desire for power and control. War unveils our rage and conflict within. Famine highlights our disconnection from the earth and each other, while death forces us to confront our deepest fears, the end of what we know. At that, the air locked within the crowd shimmered with tension as they processed his words. The young woman who had initially spoken stood firm, her resolve bolstered by the elder's insight. Then let us confront these truths. With faith we can transform this fear. The riders may embody darkness, but we can seek the light. Skepticism rippled silently through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Can we truly confront such powers when they ride among us?" The question seemed to echo all around, reverberating against the hearts of the villagers. Each began to call up their own burdens, feelings of insecurity and loss that had long been buried beneath layers of day-to-day existence. War, with a twisted smile, broke the tension. You think your hearts know struggle? You think you've tasted suffering? Let us see if your resolutions hold true when faced with the weight of real conflict. Show us your courage. A middle-aged man, pride swelling within him, stepped forward. What do we have to lose? Our faith? Our future? Will you truly fight against that which is but an echo of our own making? He gestured towards conquest, whose gaze felt sharp and penetrating. But what if choosing to be free from despair costs us dearly? Murmured another voice from the crowd, an elderly man burdened with years of regret. Fear flickered anew, alive, threatening to drown out their courage. Death shifted slightly, a gauzy figure wrapped in its own veil of shadows, its voice like ancient winds unfurling. True change begins with the acceptance of your own mortality. You are not infinite, only fleeting. How do you wish to be remembered when your cycles end? The young woman pressed on, determined to inspire action. Even within that fleeting, let us etch meaning beyond the confines of fear. If we embrace our incomplete selves, perhaps we can become vessels of transformation instead of hatred. The elder regarded her with a knowing frown. Indeed, yet hope requires nurturing a commitment to sow seeds even in barren ground. But tell me, can we commit to paths unknown when the darkness seems our only guide? Can we exercise love, humility, and faith as acts of defiance? Each face searched the others in anticipation, uncertainty hanging heavy. Was their power great enough to defy their own shadows? As the night deepened, the air thick with mystery, they encountered a truth they had only begun to fathom. As the eerie calm of the night settled, a realization dawned. The riders would not simply retreat from fear. They would thrive on it until it was faced. And as the first stars twinkled to life in the sky, another question arose, trailing the whispered hopes of the townsfolk. Which journey would they embark upon, the one that leads to understanding and unity, or the path that allows division and chaos to take root? As the night deepened, a murmur of wonder and apprehension enveloped the crowd like the very shadows cast by the riders. The wise elder raised his hand, beckoning to those gathered to listen closely, for he felt the stirring of ancient truths within the air, a thread woven through time. Let us delve deeper into these manifestations of our nature. There is more to uncover here, hidden beneath the veneer of fear. The townsfolk, sensing the weight of his words, edged closer, hearts pounding in a fragile rhythm of hope and dread. These riders, the elder continued, are not merely figures of myth. They are reflections, echoes of choices we face daily, every moment wound within the broader tapestry of existence. His voice carried the resonance of unspoken histories, and the light of the blood-red moon flickered as if in agreement. You say they embody our deepest fears, whispered the young woman, emboldened yet cautious, but could they also guide us towards a truer awakening, much like the dawn that follows the darkest night? The elder nodded, his gray eyes shimmering with wisdom. Indeed, they stand as both adversaries and teachers. To know them is to understand ourselves. Conquest, for example, not only craves dominion but reveals the hunger within us, the yearning for significance beyond mere survival. Can we acknowledge this hunger without letting it consume us? From the back of the crowd, the elderly man spoke again, voice tremulous yet steady. Then push deeper we must. But what of war? How do we learn from a spirit that incites so much suffering? Ah, the elder's brow furrowed. War is perhaps the fiercest reflection. It shows us not only the strife we face in the world, but the internal conflicts that drive our actions. It is the struggle for justice, the clash of ideals. Tell me, do you not see how division leads to violence? Do you not see it in the eyes of those you fight beside or against? The middle-aged man stepped forward, his earlier bravado softened by introspection. So, to face war, we must seek peace within ourselves, cultivate compassion amidst confrontation. Precisely, the elder affirmed. And famine? This rider gnaws at both body and spirit, twisting us into insatiable beings. It compels us to confront what we consume and what we neglect. In our pursuit of more wealth, more power, more validation, we sometimes forsake the fragile bonds that tie us to one another. A tremor of understanding rippled through the crowd as they listened intently. The truth struck home. They had felt it within their own hearts, that unquenchable thirst that led to tangible loneliness, to the depletion of kindness, and then came the shiver of death, a presence so profound it stilled all discourse. And what of me? It asked, voice resonating like a distant echo in the chapel of their souls. I am the quiet reminder that all things return to dust. Embrace me not with fear, but with understanding. I am the catalyst for valuing the very fabric of life. How else would you live fully if not knowing your days are numbered? Silence fell upon the gathering like a thick fog, each person turning inward to reflect upon the fleeting nature of existence. At that moment, the blood-red moon gazed down upon them, and the stars glittered like tears of the heavens. The young woman, with a heart emboldened by new layers of understanding, finally spoke. If these riders are indeed guides, then how do we invoke their lessons? How do we avoid succumbing to despair in learning from them? In that questioning, the air hummed with potential, fragile yet resilient. As the crowd contemplated, the elder's expression shifted. To live as if the riders dwell within is the essence of true wisdom. It is in grappling with our fears that we uncover the strength to rise above. To embody love amidst conflict, to foster unity in scarcity, to forge hope in the face of mortality, therein lies the path forward. Yet doubt stirred once more, shadowing the flickers of hope. But will we know when we have transformed enough to face them? How can we be sure we will not falter? Another voice, trembling with uncertainty, broke through as they held their breath. The night thickened around them, and the enigmatic riddle loomed large. Amidst all they had come to understand, could it be that the most daunting battle lay not against the horsemen themselves, but within the very essences of their own spirits? As dawn began to softly break, casting pale rays across the night's remnants, the townsfolk lingered in thought beneath the still watching moon. The elder, sensing the gathering tension of uneasy hearts, paused to allow contemplation to settle. They stood together in silence, bound by a thread woven from uncertainty and the flickering flame of awakening. The young woman, emboldened by the stirring revelations, spoke again, her voice unwavering. If they are indeed manifestations of our own struggles, how then do we ensure that we do not fall prey to their darker natures? For in recognizing them, we tread a fine line between harnessing their lessons and being consumed by their shadows. The elder regarded her with a gentle wisdom. You ask the pivotal question. The journey inward is not without its perils. Acknowledging the riders is not to surrender to despair, but rather to confront transformation. The heart must be our compass, tempered with courage and compassion. Yet to navigate this inner terrain requires not just understanding but action. As the sun's golden hue began to fill the sky, illuminating their faces with hope, the elder turned his gaze to the horizon. Look beyond your fears. In the embrace of community lies the antidote to despair. Role and identity are risks. They evolve with our choices. Each step towards understanding fosters a greater resilience that can shield us against the rider's malevolent beckoning. At this, a boy from the front stepped forward, curiosity gleaming in his eyes. But if we confront them together, what becomes of those who refuse to see the truth? What of those who are blind to their own shadows? The elder's expression darkened momentarily as the truth of the boy's words echoed within him. A bitter reality indeed. The courageous yet painful task is to extend love where rejection reigns. To illuminate pathways without forcing light into eyes unready to see. Every heart journeys at a different pace. Patience and kindness will be your guiding stars. The townsfolk mulled over this weighty challenge, feeling the stirrings of both hope and frustration within themselves. Trusting in the wisdom of patience felt like grappling with the unending surge of an ebbing tide. That in the hush following the elder's words, the stillness was abruptly pierced by a shiver of wind, stirring the air thick with tension. The woman who had sparked the earlier conversation raised her voice anew, this time questioning the very essence of her newfound understanding. But must we not also guard against becoming complacent? If our understanding of these fears is merely intellectual, what of the passion needed to enact true change in ourselves and our community? The elder gave a solemn nod, recognizing her struggle. A fervent heart, tempered with the understanding of fear, is the key to forging change. But beware, for complacency is a rider of its own, lulling us into believing understanding alone is enough. Only through intentional, grounded action can we risk the vulnerability that brings about genuine transformation. With the sun now gracing them fully, the crowd felt a renewed sense of purpose but also a strange weight at their core. Were they prepared to confront their own battles, to insist upon their own growth, and to illuminate that path for their neighbors? Were they ready to acknowledge that awakening was a shared endeavor, fraught with both joy and pain? The elder raised his voice once more, drawing their attention back to the urgency of their gathering. Remember, my dear friends, the specters we see are reflections of our true selves. Embrace them, learn from them, but do not let them define you. For within each of you lies the ability to become a rider of hope, unafraid to challenge darkness with light. And as the townsfolk listened, a question lingered in the air, unaddressed yet heavy. Could they contend with their shadows together without losing themselves in the process? What truly awaited them on this path of transformation? As the day wore on and the sun settled high in the azure sky, the air shimmered with an unusual calm, a deceptive serenity that might hide beneath it the echoes of uncertainty. The townsfolk now found themselves engrossed in hushed dialogues, the elders' words resonating in their hearts like the toll of a distant bell. The notion that the embodiment of their fears and strife had formed the Four Horsemen stirred something primal within them, and they felt an almost magnetic pull to dig deeper into the complexity of these figures. Later that afternoon, a small group gathered in the center of the town, their eyes devoted to the cast shadows that danced before them. The woman who had voiced her concerns earlier, the one with the fire of insight reflecting in her gaze, gathered her courage once more. She spoke, her voice steady as she took a step forward. What if these riders represent not only our internal struggles, but also the world outside? The war, the pestilence, the hunger that devastates lands far from here? Are they warnings or perhaps even calls to action? A murmur washed over the crowd as her words settled among them like a sudden gust of wind, unsettling yet invigorating. The elder, sensing the potential for awakening in her question, replied thoughtfully, "Indeed, the horsemen are not merely manifestations of our personal fears. They are entreaties to recognize the broader chaos, that the external is not separated from the internal. We must explore their nature beyond our own boundaries. Understanding their weight in the world could be the very catalyst needed for change." The boy, still filled with youthful wonder, raised his hand eager for insight. "But elder, if we are to face all that they represent, how do we harness our strengths without being overwhelmed by the scope of what lies ahead? The sheer existence of these hordes feels insurmountable." The elder paused, a profound solemnity enveloping his demeanor. "The journey of understanding begins with small acts. What we see in the world is often a reflection of our inaction. The horsemen ride into chaos because we allow them to. Our helplessness fuels their strength. We might not be able to halt the tide of famine or war at once, but we can break bread with our neighbor, extend a hand to those in need, create a ripple of kindness that could push back against despair." There was a thread of resolve weaving through the hearts of everyone present, but it also wrapped tightly around their throats. They felt the burden of action, the urgent pull of responsibility, and yet the question remained: could their hearts withstand the challenge of unity in the face of overwhelming odds? They looked at each other, faces marked with hope and trepidation, as dusk began to descend, casting a subtle glow across their gathering. A voice from the edge of the crowd spoke up. An elderly man, his face etched with lines that told tales of struggle and sacrifice, shared with a tremor in his voice, "In my years, I have seen the crusaders and the kings, the brokers of despair entrenched in greed. I have seen the world, young and old, succumb to the riders too many times. But can we believe that we can turn the tide? What must we sacrifice to create this change?" His question lingered heavily, and silence reigned as the townspeople reflected upon the gravity of his words. The flickering light cast long shadows of uncertainty on the ground, mirroring the very struggle they faced, not only against their fears but among their fellow beings. In that moment, the weight of their reality pressed against them. The fearful visions of the horsemen became more vivid, reminding them that every decision they made would echo beyond their lives, carving paths away from darkness or deeper into despair. Were they prepared to face the truths that interconnected their souls with the very essence of humanity? With the sun dipping below the horizon, the winds whispered through the trees as a remnant of late daylight glimmered softly. What sacrifices would they consider to forge this larger community that could confront the chaos together? And could they find strength not only in themselves but in the tangled bonds of their shared humanity? As night began to envelop the earth, a profound reflection hung in the air. Would their collective efforts to face the horsemen lead to new beginnings, or would they simply be swallowed by the shadows they sought to overcome? As the moon illuminated the village with its silvery glow, the gathering of villagers remained suspended in a moment of contemplation, their hearts heavy with the elder's words. Each one felt the stirring of conscience, the weight of history set against the delicate fabric of their hopes. How did they avoid becoming mere spectators to their own lives, instead becoming the very agents of change they wished to see? Among them was young Miriam, her brow furrowed in thought as she scanned the faces of her neighbors. What if, she began tentatively, breaking the hushed silence, instead of seeing the horsemen as foes to be resisted, we examine them as parts of ourselves that demand healing. Could they reside within us all, calling us to introspection? Her idea ignited a spark. The air crackled with energy as others began to nod, considering an alternative angle. Was it possible that rather than external forces to be vanquished, the horsemen were reflections of their own frailties, amplifying their very human struggles with war, famine, pestilence, and death? They grasped the profound depth of her insight, realizing that the journey towards overcoming external chaos might first begin with internal reconciliation. An older woman with silver hair added, in ancient texts, the horsemen rode forth under the seals of revelation, each representing deeper truths about humanity. What if we dared to explore our own seals, those that bind us to anger, greed, fear, and sorrow? Only when we face their shadows can we illuminate the path forward. The gathering grew animated, exchanging stories of their individual battles with despair, anger, and loss. It became clear there was no single path to confronting these existential horsemen, but myriad stories interwoven that depicted their shared humanity. As they explored the narratives of existence, the tales revealed a universality threaded through their lives, a tapestry adorned with both suffering and resilience. Miriam spoke again. What if our sacrifices are not only our belongings or offerings to others, but also our willingness to confront those silent fears, to be vulnerable among each other, to acknowledge our shortcomings, and to strive for compassion in times of turmoil? The elder looked at her, seeing the fire of awakening in the young woman's eyes, a flicker of wisdom sparking there. Brave are those who understand that the greatest battles are fought within. When we embrace those fragments of ourselves, the losses, the pain, the darker inclinations to invite healing not just for ourselves but for the whole community. As night deepened, the ethereal moon bore witness to their discourse, with the stars twinkling overhead like silent guardians. They wondered, could healing truly catalyze change? As they exchanged thoughts, uncertainty still lingered in the air, like a veil hanging just out of reach. Could embracing vulnerability eradicate fear's stronghold? How might their willingness to face such depths invite a new collective strength against the chaos beyond their realm? The townspeople exchanged glances, each soul struggling to grasp the unseen connection they now shared. Their world, still interwoven with the whispers of the horsemen, urged them forward into the unknown. As they contemplated the journey that lay ahead, a new question emerged, resonating within the cool night air. Could this mutual understanding and acceptance lead them towards a radical transformation? Or would the shadows of their inner horsemen continue to cast darkness upon their hearts and their community? As dawn broke over the village, the warm light of the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, a serene contrast to the heavy emotions of the previous night. The villagers awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, yet the questions that lingered from their gathering, the nature of the horsemen and the shadows they cast, still weighed heavily on their minds. Miriam rose early, her spirit stirred by the discussions that had unfolded. She felt an undeniable call to seek deeper understanding, not just of the horsemen themselves, but of the threads that connected her community to these formidable symbols of disruption. With each footstep outside, she could feel the pulse of the earth beneath her, as though it, too, was awakening to offer her guidance. Upon reaching the village outskirts, Miriam found a grove of ancient trees, a sacred place where the villagers often retreated for introspection. She sat on a weathered log, closed her eyes, and began to meditate on the horsemen. Images of war flashed through her mind, a figure cloaked in crimson, wielding a sword. Famine emerged as a haunting silhouette, likened to a gaunt specter, his hand extended as if to grasp at the very essence of life. Pestilence appeared like a shadow, shrouded in twilight, whispering reminders of sickness and despair. Finally, death loomed, draped in shades of midnight, always present yet perpetually distant. Miriam's heart raced as she pondered their meanings. What if I invited them to speak? She whispered into the stillness of the morning. What might they reveal if I dared to face them rather than flee? As she opened herself to this inner dialogue, It felt as though the air around her thickened, charged with anticipation. In that ethereal moment, she sensed the presence of the horsemen, their whispers merging with the wind. War's voice boomed within her. I am the strife you harbor, the ambition that blinds you. But through conflict, both external and internal, comes the chance for reconciliation. Famine followed, a softer whisper filling her mind. I am the hunger that gnaws at you not just for food but for connection, understanding, and purpose. In acknowledging your needs, you may discover the riches of community. Then came pestilence, its breath like a chilling breeze. Do not fear me. I am but a reflection of neglect, the times when you avoid truth and hide from reality. Healing comes through confronting the very ailments you choose to ignore. Finally, a deep, resonant silence marked death's arrival. I am the inevitable truth, the change you resist. Embrace me, and you shall find that new beginnings arise from endings. In accepting endings, you may birth new life. Moments stretched into timelessness as Miriam absorbed these revelations, feeling the intertwining connections of fear and hope. Each horseman revealed not just chaos but an invitation towards resilience, growth, and community. Their whispers, though unsettling, held profound truths that could spur transformation, if only they were acknowledged rather than shunned. As the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow upon the grove, Miriam emerged from her contemplations, carrying these insights back with her. Her heart brimmed with urgency to share this newfound understanding with her fellow villagers. Upon her return, she gathered them once more, her voice steady as she recounted her experience. The villagers listened, captivated but uncertain. They were intrigued by the horseman's words yet hesitated, grappling with their own fears and their deep-rooted connection to the struggles she described. Miriam posed a question to the assembly that echoed the sentiments she now carried within. What if these shadows, the very essence of struggle, are not only to be feared or resisted but engaged with? How might we begin to turn that fear into understanding, forging a path toward healing? The villagers exchanged glances, each one wrestling with their internal strife but drawn closer by Miriam's vision. They sensed the possibility of transmuting their fears into strength, but a palpable tension loomed, a fear of the unknown and a reluctance to confront the horsemen within as thoughts swirled like autumn leaves in the breeze. Uncertainty gripped their hearts. Could the acceptance of their inner shadows illuminate the path to unity, or would those very shadows lead them down a path of despair? The quest for answers had only begun, and they stood at the precipice of revelation, pondering a deeper question: what courage would it take to embrace the horsemen, and could they find the strength to wield that courage as a collective force for transformation? As the villagers mulled over Miriam's insights, they found themselves caught in a web of introspection. The air was thick with emotion, a mixture of hope and dread swirling within the gathering. The daily struggles of their lives felt larger than ever as familiar faces turned into vessels of unspoken fears, lives touched by conflict, want, illness, and the specter of mortality that loomed unbendingly beside them. And the following days, the villagers took small steps towards understanding the horsemen, initially in secret. Groups formed in dimly lit corners, and hushed conversations spread throughout the village. Some began to share their own stories of loss, of hunger, of battles both physical and emotional, but still, a strong undercurrent of reluctance ran through their interactions. Each individual's fear echoed a deep-seated belief: the horsemen were enemies to be vanquished rather than truths to be confronted. Among them was Eli, a farmer whose land had been ravaged by drought. He had watched helplessly as the earth cracked beneath the sweltering sun, his crops withering away, leaving him with an emptiness that felt like famine wrapping its arms around him. Eli approached Miriam one evening, his brow furrowed, humility lacing his voice. What do we do if we cannot face these horsemen? He asked. What if their whispers simply remind us of our failures? Miriam listened intently, knowing that behind Eli's words lay a deep battle within him. To deny their presence is to deny a part of ourselves, she replied gently. What if you took a moment to unearth the lessons they bear? Famine itself can open the heart to gratitude, to a deeper understanding of what it means to nurture not just the soil but each other. Eli nodded slowly, uncertain yet intrigued by the prospect of such transformation. Miriam encouraged him to share this revelation with the community, to turn collective despair into a dialogue that invited new perspectives. Inspired, Ellie, another villager and healer, joined Eli to weave her own narrative into the fabric of their struggle. She spoke of pestilence and how it had swept through their village, claiming loved ones and leaving behind fear and uncertainty. Yet from that darkness had emerged a fierce community of caretakers, stepping forward with compassion to care for those who fell ill. "Can we not recognize pestilence as a mirror?" she exclaimed. "A reminder to tend to each other with love before despair takes root? Each outbreak has forged connections we may have overlooked." Her words sparked something within the group, and a wave of realization washed over them. They began to see how the horsemen, once horror stories shrouded in darkness, were intertwined with the heartbeats of their own narratives. They needed not engage with them as adversaries but rather as catalysts for change. The discussions transformed, and with it, the village's heart began to beat in unison, a soft rhythm of acceptance. More villagers joined the gatherings, sharing tales of their battles with war, igniting conversations filled with both vulnerability and understanding. They began asking each other difficult questions. How have our ambitions driven us apart? How can we find reconciliation in our choices? Yet despite this growing movement toward unity, shadows still lingered. The sense of collective courage grew yet felt unsteady, with many wondering where the path would lead. The weight of death remained a constant presence, evoking silent fears about the price of acceptance and whether they could endure the changes it would bring. Miriam sensed the rise of a new tension. Exhilaration mingled with anxiety, as villagers were now standing on the brink of something unknown. They had ventured into the realm of their shadows, and while illumination beckoned on the horizon, many still felt the chill of fear about what might emerge. Gathering the people once more under the sprawling stars, Miriam raised her voice, resounding with both authority and tenderness. "We stand here on the edge of revelation. Let us remember that true transformation requires more than mere understanding. It demands the courage not only to accept our shadows but to contend with them as allies. But we must ask ourselves, as we strive to transcend our individual fears, will we find strength in one another, or will we falter at the gates of our own potential?" Whispers of agreement mingled with uncertain silence, as the villagers grappled with the profound weight of this challenge. They wondered if they had the resolve necessary to forge ahead, together, into an uncertain future where the horsemen were not merely echoes of chaos but harbingers of evolution. The road to understanding had become laden with questions that awaited answers, echoing deep in their spirits. What would it take for us to embrace our destinies forged in shadows, and can we transform our fears into a living, breathing force that uplifts and unites us all? As the village gathered under the embrace of twilight, the air shimmered with expectation, alive with the kindling sparks of newfound hope and vulnerable truths. Each villager had begun to grapple with the shadows they once feared, and in that shared experience lay a burgeoning unique, delicate yet powerful recognition that they were bound not just by their struggles, but also by their resolve to rise above them. Miriam stood before the crowd, her heart pulsing with the intensity of the moment. "We stand on the edge of transformation. My friends," she began, her voice steady yet filled with warmth. "We have heard the whispers of the horsemen, seen their reflections in our lives, and dared to listen to the truths they carry. But now, not only must we face them, we must embrace them." The crowd stirred, a whirlwind of emotions filling their hearts. A mixture of hope and trepidation mingled as they faced the realization of the journey inviting them forward. What would it mean to embrace not just their personal fears but the collective consciousness woven through their community? The elder stepped forward, an undeniable light glimmering in his wise eyes. "In every journey of awakening lies the opportunity for rebirth. Conquest may teach us to harness our ambitions without allowing greed to consume us. War reminds us that conflict can be a crucible for peace. Famine serves to deepen our compassion, while death offers us a chance to cherish life's fleeting beauty." The villagers listened intently, considering the elder's words, feeling the weight of connection and resistance tugging at them. A murmured ripple of agreement passed through the assembly, their spirits lifting as clarity washed over them. If the horsemen were to be seen as guides rather than adversaries, perhaps the darkness they embodied could lead them toward the light of understanding. Eli, emboldened by the elders' wisdom, stepped forward. What would it look like to acknowledge famine? If I were to tend my land not just for my sake, but for the community's nourishment? If I approached the land as an extension of us all? His words ignited a wave of insight among the villagers, inspiring others to share how their shadows transformed into beacons of positivity. Ellie, the healer, nodded fervently. And pestilence. Every time we have turned to one another in illness, we have strengthened our bonds. It has taught us resilience. It has opened our hearts to collective compassion. Can we not continue to nurture that connection by reaching out when illness surrounds us? The conversations grew louder, the energy palpable as hearts became intertwined through each story shared. Miriam watched the tapestry of human experience unfold, vibrant and raw, as villagers began to unearth their hidden hopes amidst fears. What once felt insurmountable began to reveal the threads of love woven through their darkest corners. Then, from the back of the gathering, an older woman with wise eyes rose slowly to speak. But what about death? How do we honor our losses without succumbing to despair? She queried, the question hanging heavily in the air. Miriam replied with conviction, we honor our dead by living fully, by embracing the stories they left behind. Every ending leads to a new beginning. Every loss paves the way for a deeper appreciation of connection. What if we celebrated our lives together, fostering an environment where vulnerability flourishes? In that moment, a powerful realization gripped them all. Together, the villagers began drawing plans, envisioning a vibrant community that reframed its struggles. Their gatherings would become altars of remembrance, spaces where they could both mourn and celebrate life's intricate weave. They would strengthen their roots as a collective, reflecting resilience that could withstand the pounding hooves of the horsemen themselves as their voices mingled with the night, filled with hopes for a brighter future. A sudden gust of wind swept across the village square. The shadows danced wildly, yet none felt fear. They felt strength, a warmth radiating from their shared insights, a knowing that the horsemen served their purpose in guiding them toward metamorphosis. Then, as dawn crested the horizon, painting the world anew, Miriam turned to the elder once more. Together, we rise, not as individuals fighting against the tide, but as a collective force acknowledging our shadows. Our unity shall become our strength, our courage our identity. And in that moment, something shifted in the depths of their spirits. The culmination of their fears, observed and embraced, was no longer a source of paralysis. It transformed into a wellspring of resilience. They took a collective breath, drawing in the light of the dawn a powerful acknowledgement that the shadows would always exist, intertwined with the light. Yet, it was in their choice to confront, to embrace, and to rise, that they found the ultimate truth of their existence. As the sun stretched across the sky, the villagers stepped forward together, side by side. The horsemen rode on the winds above them, now no longer figures of fear but rather echoes of their own trials, a reminder that transformation often comes from the engagement with darkness. And therein lies the beauty of what it means to be human. With hearts ignited, they turned their eyes toward a future teeming with possibility, for they had begun to recognize the power held within every shared narrative. The horsemen remained ever present, but no longer as conquerors of despair. They had become guides illuminating the path to a united rebirth. And as they moved forward, seeds of hope took root, promising a legacy of love, understanding, and strength, each step echoing the reverberation of their choice to rise above. And that moment, they understood profound truth, that life is an intricate dance of shadows and light. Eclipsing fear with love not only transformed their village, transcended the boundaries of existence, creating ripples of faith that resonated throughout the world. They had chosen to embrace their shadows, and in so doing, had kindled the light within their hearts, forever igniting the power of community, bound by the beauty of brokenness and hope.